Well, there's nothing going on in the world of COVID, so we're not going to talk about that, which is good. That's actually a good thing. But of course, now there's a hantavirus. That's who knows where that's going to land, which I will tell you my opinion on this. But I do want to, before I get there, thanks so much for those who filled out the community questionnaire. Stephanie will put in the link. I don't know. I think it's still active. We're gonna try to do this periodically. This is your opportunity to tell us what you want to hear or what you don't want to hear. It seems like people are really more interested in hearing other things rather than COVID. So we'll try to emphasize COVID less. There was specific request to talk about hantavirus, which is what I'll do today. Yeah, so you know the drill. Otherwise, put the questions in the chat if you desperately want to ask them. Raise your hand. We'll unmute you in due time. So hantavirus. I misspoke. I think 2 weeks ago when I said, no one should care about this. Hantavirus is transmitted only from rodents to humans. So apparently this one is different. So this is a rare situation where this particular strain was sometimes described as Argentinian strain, which is the only known strain that can transmit human to human. Now, that doesn't mean there's a time to panic, but it is serious illness. Mortality is 30 to 40%, so that's not anywhere near what COVID was. But the transmission, thank God, is very slow. It requires a very large amount of exposure. You all heard that the doctor on a cruise seems to be gotten it because he was involved with all those patients for a prolonged period of time. Um, I still don't change my opinion. I don't think this is going to go anywhere. It's just going to kind of be out there in the media for a few more weeks and then it'll die out because the reality is this is relatively easy to contain. It's not going to spread beyond what just happened. Now, does that still raise some red flags? Not really. I mean, we all know that there are illnesses like this circulating. We all know that there's a lot of zoonotic and other viral infections that has a very high mortality rates. You know, they're going to keep mutating, they're going to keep changing. There's always going to be some risk. We have to be, of course, vigilant. But I think this is definitely not a next pandemic, so sleep well and don't worry about it. So that's just all I can say about that. And I don't think you need to spend additional time trying to read up on this or trying to hunt down information of any kind. It's just too improbable for us to truly be concerned about it. But of course, because it's in the news and you sort of faced into it, I thought I'll share that. Um, okay, and that's all because I want to give full time to Alexander and Lisa today. So let's just do Q&A for next no more than maybe 9 minutes so that we end at 2:15 sharp. And yes, so one important thing is the questionnaire that Stephanie posted, the Google document. This is not just for you to you know tell us how we're doing. This is for you to provide other ideas. So if you're desperately looking for something, and let us know. Maybe we can accommodate. I mean, I can't promise you anything. We're doing our best, but we always try to pay attention to all your comments and make sure that we try to answer the questions. Even if there's some questions that we cannot answer immediately, we can research them or find people who can answer. Okay, so Antoinette is asking, how about immunocompromised people? So you're going to be at much higher risk of picking it up and having it more severe. But again, because the risk of transmission is so low and because they contain it already, I don't think that any of us really truly need to be worried about. Immunocompromised situations are much more concerning in cases where you faced with the very high chances of getting an infection. So, for example, COVID, right? So we all had a situation earlier on where like everybody was exposed and everybody was picking up. So that's a more serious situation because you're probably going to get it sooner or later. If you're immune compromised, your chances of getting more serious illness is higher. So, but when the disease transmits slowly and it requires a very large amount of exposure. The immune compromise per se is not necessarily the highest risk here because highest risk would be your exposure. Are you exposed or not? And again, even in the healthy people, mortality with hantavirus is very high. It's 30 to 40%. And I'm sure immune compromise increases that risk, but that's already 30 to 40%. That's 1 in 3, if not more. So I hope that answered it. Always interested in updates on cannabis research and ideas for using cannabis products for specific health issues. Okay. Well, we're doing that. I mean, we're regularly updating it, right? I recently, since you asked, I recently listened to a presentation, short, well, it's a long podcast of some kind of an expert who claiming that cannabis is horrendously detrimental to the sperm count. And so this is a great, and this was on Huberman's podcast. So this is a great example of total misunderstanding of what's what. So this lady is clearly an advanced expert in fertility and has absolutely zero expertise in cannabis. So she basically was saying all cannabis is bad. She didn't even bother saying that there's zero evidence on cannabis, medical cannabis hurting sperm. There is zero evidence on non-inhalable forms of cannabis doing anything to the sperm count whatsoever. All of this is related to the recreational use of a very high dose of smoking, which of course is going to negatively impact sperm, just like tobacco smoking would be. So it's just fascinating to me that, and the way she was presenting, she was like, basically, damn if you take one gummy, you're gonna basically be infertile forever. Like that was the message that she was delivering, which I was like, interesting how much global misunderstanding is out there, even in the cases of advanced experts in some other field. So it just acknowledges how much additional teaching and training we have to do in a society and how much we have to really separate recreational versus medical, how much we have to discuss various routes of administration, how much we really have to teach things that are, you know, toxicity is important to understand, but you have to balance that and look at everything in a balanced way, not just yell at every corner that cannabis is bad for everybody and there's no benefits of any kind. All right. Um, well, if there's no other questions, I can yield my 4 minutes that's left. I'm totally happy with that. If needed, we can have a little bit of time at the end. So thank you, Alexandra and Lisa, for taking time to be with us. And Janet, do you want to introduce them? Is that what you said? Do you want to introduce them before they go? I thought you already did.
She did, yes.
Yeah. All right. So I don't need to be spotlighted here. So let's switch to you guys. Thank you so much.
Then I am going to take over uh, and pull up my.
And we see your slides really well. So
Oh,
that's
you do already? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Why am I not seeing them? Oh, here we go. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. I am going to talk about Tango Mercurio's adapted tango program for people with Parkinson's disease today. As the program manager for our older adult outreach program. And a word about uh, Tango Mercurio itself. We're a nonprofit arts education organization established in DC, and our mission is to build community through Argentine tango. Now, for most of you, when you hear tango, you think of flashy, acrobatic, dancing with the stars type tango, but that's not what we teach and practice. What we do is an improvised social dance. In other words, something that regular people all around the world have been doing in dance halls and community centers for over 100 years. And it involves moving around a dance floor in couples in a very close embrace, as you can see here. This is a photo of a recent dance party. They're called milongas in Buenos Aires. We have several programs. Our main one is our dance program, which is classes for the general public from beginners to advanced. And we organize our own tango dance parties, our own milongas in Northeast DC at La Cosecha, which is near Eastern Market. And so you can see here's a recent example of one of our events, and it looks very similar to what you just saw that was happening in Argentina, which is part of the beauty of the dance. It has really universal appeal. And imagine all of these couples in their tight embrace moving around the dance floor. And so what we've done is um, used an adapted form of this dance, and I'll give you some more details about how it's adapted to help people with movement disorders, because the main thing about tango is it's so much fun, it's very addictive, and that gives people motivation. We also have a live music program. We sponsor an ensemble of 5 musicians, 4 of whom you can see here, who perform at our dance parties. We have plans to have them perform at concerts as well. And we incorporate a live music element in our adapted tango program by inviting a professional musician, including the seated bandoneon player in jeans there, to come give a talk to the class participants about the music so people can see the instrument, this very distinctive bandoneon, which is a squeeze box like a concertina, close up and hear it and hear about how it's played and different ways it's played and appreciate the music more. Music education is part of our program. Among our outreach programs, we have the older adult program. That's the one that I manage. We also have a queer tango program that makes switching roles and more comfortable for the LGBTQ plus community, but everyone is welcome. And we've had classes for youth. Here you see a photo of a class at Bell Multicultural School where we led a month-long series of classes. As part of our older adult outreach, last year we launched this adapted tango program for people with Parkinson's and other movement disorders and their caregivers. And you can see how we use an adapted form of the embrace. It's sometimes called practice embrace. And the advantage it has for people with movement disorders is that it's symmetrical and there's a little more space between the partners, which makes it easier to move. A word about Parkinson's disease for those of you who aren't familiar with it. It's a neurodegenerative progressive disease for which there is no cure. There are over 1 million cases just in the US, with 90,000 new cases diagnosed each year. And though it's classified as a movement disorder, it can have many non-motor symptoms. There are some drugs and surgical options, but unfortunately, they're only partially helpful. The disease is caused by the loss of certain cells in the brain that produce dopamine, a neurotransmitter. And those affected brain circuits include not just movement, but also attention and learning. Among the movement, the ways Parkinson's affects movements are the patient takes shorter, slower steps. They have difficulty starting and stopping movements, difficulty performing repetitive movements, 2 simultaneous tasks, and also it affects their balance, so they have a higher fall risk. They also may have resting tremors. We've had some people where they have like the shakes, involuntary movement, and conversely also freezing, where suddenly they can't move even if they want to. The good news is that exercise has been proven to help those patients. And the way it works is it challenges the brain with new activities, which help the brain form new synaptic connections and communicate better. And of course, like any exercise program, the benefits increase when the challenges are ongoing, such as dance classes. Adapted Tango offers a moderate intensity activity with motivation and practice in numerous real life skills that can be challenging for people with Parkinson's and other conditions. The program was developed by Dr. Madeline Hackney. She's an associate professor at the Emory School of Medicine and a research scientist at the Atlanta VA Medical Center. And she has a very unique background in that she was originally trained as a professional dancer, performed on Broadway and in films, and then went and got a PhD in neuroscience and developed this program about which she's published over 40 peer-reviewed papers that have demonstrated the benefits of this adapted tango program. So you all know the image of Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers dancing together, um, moving forward and backwards, initiating and stopping movement, varying speed and rhythm, navigating among others, sustaining attention, synchronizing movement with a partner. All of these address those issues that I just listed about how Parkinson's affects movement. And you can see here we have Parkinson's patients dancing not with each other. That's part of the adapted side of it, because since they're fall risks, we don't want to have any additional risks. But instead, we have a whole pool of assistant volunteers who've been specially trained in the program and who rotate with all the Parkinson's participants to dance with each and every one of them. And everyone dances both lead and follow roles. So in order to get everyone trained, we Tango Mercurio brought Dr. Hackney to Washington last September to lead a training session. And you can see that there was a lot of demand for this training. And as part of that, we went through the whole adapted tango curriculum. So here's a typical class structure. We'll start with a seated warm-up. The instructor or instructors will introduce a new step. Then the participants will practice with the trained assistants. And we found that the classes are an hour and a half, and after about 45 minutes of this, most of the Parkinson's participants are ready for a break. So we do a little seated segment about tango history, which is something that I'm very passionate about and have studied through an Argentine university. So I talk, and I also have a background as a translator, so I'm familiar with the lyrics, which I've also studied in that course. And so I give the participants background about the music, which we listen to seated intentionally to discover the different instruments, the ways the music is played. We focus on certain iconic songs and the poetry behind them, so that adds an extra dimension to learning about the music and the dance. And then we'll do a segment that Madeline calls rhythmic entrainment. It's a way of helping people hear rhythm in music by doing a rhythm exercise where we'll take different beats and clap them out, tap them out with a foot, sway them out with our hips, march them out in place, and then walk them out with a partner, which is a really fun exercise for everyone. Then the last segment of the class will be a review of all the steps we've learned, and then open practice, again, switching roles, leading and following, and changing partners. To date, since last September, we have offered this class to 22 people with Parkinson's or other movement disorders, along with 5 caregivers. They were all the spouses of some of the participants. We had 21 trained assistants, along with 4 lead instructors now. That's 3 of the trained assistants who have become lead instructors in training with me and who are fully prepared. And for a total of 22 weeks of weekly 1.5-hour classes in 4 series. To assess the results of this program, we have all the participants fill out an evaluation form at the beginning of the first class and then at the end of the last one. And we give them a timed up and go test, a very simple mobility test to measure whether there's been any change in their mobility. The test is also helpful for us because it assesses fall risk, and that has definitely correlated with the people who we observed were less stable. And we've had mixed results in terms of mobility. The first two sessions did show an 8% improvement in mobility, which we found quite stunning, but the last two have not shown any improvement, maybe even a slight decline. But we had a majority of participants report self-report an improvement in quality of life, and also 100% satisfaction with organization of the program, and 95% who would recommend the program. And what do they like best about the program? Almost all the participants said the volunteers, and you can see some of these quotes. The volunteers were wonderful. The volunteers were fun and very devoted. An amazing group of volunteers, helpful, positive, understanding. That was from a caregiver. And that shows that this program definitely provides the motivation to keep moving. And in our last class, we had all repeat customers. Several others have also repeated the class. And we have our next session coming up June 3rd. I encourage anyone interested or who knows anyone who's interested to sign up. It is offered free of charge. All you need to do is register, and people can retake the class. And you may recognize here Antoinette, who's on the call today. She's one of our volunteer assistant instructors. And then in the fall, we'll have two more series starting September 2nd. And if people are interested, they can take it all the way through till November 18th. We are fully funded for this year entirely through grants and donations. Our main source of income for outreach is the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities. We've also gotten smaller grants from the Bethesda Chevy Chase Rotary Club and the Retirees Association of the Inter-American Development Bank, where I used to work, along with thousands of dollars in individual donations. And that fundraising is ongoing through our GoFundMe, which is linked on our website. And here's the website, tangomercurio.org/adapted-tango. You can also write to us at info@tangomercurio.org to get more information and connect with me. And if we have time for questions, I'd be happy to take them now. Shall I stop the share?
Folks, don't be shy. Okay, so I'll have Phil, you can unmute yourself.
Um, for people who use walkers because they have balance issues, um, how might they fit into this?
Well, in theory, the idea is participants need to be able to walk 20 feet unassisted, but we have had two participants who use a cane. I believe that we could make adjustments. We would just have to make sure that the person was stable enough while dancing with one of the volunteers, because we've had no falls so far and we want to keep it that way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I see there was a question in the chat about other programs. We were inspired by a program in Philadelphia, which launched just a year before ours, called the Tango Therapy Project. And that was where I initially took the training with Dr. Hackney and met her and was so impressed with how knowledgeable and engaging she was. And that was part of the motivation for Tango Mercurio to bring her to DC, because I knew that if they could have such a program in Philadelphia, surely we could have one here in DC, given the need.
Is there a website where people can go to find out where the different adapted tango programs are?
I don't know about a website, but I could definitely put you in touch with Dr. Hackney, who would know.
Okay. So, folks, we will try and get answers to those questions you've put in the chat about where you can go and do this program.
I'm putting my personal email in the chat so you can contact me directly.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful.
And anyone, please feel free to contact me with any questions.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. We really appreciate it. That was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you for having me. It's great to meet all of you.
Hey, Lisa Klein.
Hi.
All right, folks, Lisa's going to tell you a little bit about herself and then we'll get started.
And I have no slides, but we do have handouts that are going to be linked in the thing there. So I am a traditionally trained physical therapist, but I wanted to do different work. I wanted to really help people to heal from the inside out. So I spent the entirety of my 35-year career studying and learning, and now I teach quite a bit nationally and internationally. I trained with the developer of IMT. She was a genius, and I've had a lot of mentoring throughout the years. So I have 3 clinics in the DMV area, and all we do is manual medicine. There is a huge missing link in American medicine, as I'm sure Dr. Kogan would agree with, about manual medicine. And if you've seen that New York Times article that just came out, which is awesome, about fascia, they link that to acupuncture, which is energetic. And we're like the fascial people. So I'm just like, oh, New York Times. So it was a great article, but it missed the boat on, interventions. But anywho, so we are physical therapists who treat all hands-on. We use a body work that's about 20,000 techniques. There is a technique to reset every tissue in the body. We work with a paradigm that we've systematized, and we're launching an online class program called the Body Operating System, which is how basically we call it turning around the Titanic. How do we get people going from one direction into another direction? And pinging on what Dr. Kogan mentioned about viral load, which is a great way of explaining what's happening with the hantavirus. Everything that we do is about load. So we are structurists. So our training and interventions are all structurally related, and everything that happens to you in your life has the potential to create load on your system. And this could be muscle, nerve, bone, but more importantly, vascular, organ systems. All these things have the capacity to hold load. So every time something happens to you, you fall down the stairs, you trip and fall, different sports injuries, car accidents, all of these physical impact traumas to your body have the potential to create load on the tissue, specifically, obviously, the fascia. And at some point, you could hit load failure, which means things just kind of shut down. So, our piece of the pie that we treat is structural load. There's also physiological load, obviously, which, COVID, Lyme, inflammation, food sensitivities, IBS, Crohn's, all that, you've got all kinds of physiological loads going on. And then the third load that is in the trifecta is energetic load. So energetic load is trauma, things that happen to you, things you experience, mind, body, soul, spirit types of loads. And any and all of these loads have the capacity to load down the system. And again, people seek care when they hit load failure. So when our clients come in, we're trained to map the fascia and also feel for cellular motilities. So our our job is to basically use the hands, which can be trained to be extremely sensitive. And labs and imaging are great, but there is a whole world of manual stuff that can happen that is before it hits labs and imaging. Like all of my patients who have Parkinsonian symptoms have clean MRIs. So there's obviously a whole world under there that can be happening and causing symptoms that may not necessarily show up on labs and imaging. And that's where we swim. So our role is to use the hands for diagnostics to help practitioners with interventions. And we work with a lot of practitioners in the area as part of their care teams. And again, we're structurists. So we primarily treat. We treat, again, every tissue in the body. And we also do some physiology. So we'll do basic physiology to support the tissue. If it's above our scope, we liberally send out to naturopaths and functional medicine doctors. And then if it's more of an energetic issue, we get a lot of referrals from the Viva Center and other trauma-informed therapists in the area, and we work on the physical part of that trauma. We're going to go over that in a second. And then we also very liberally refer out to mind body care and acupuncture. So we work in networks, care networks, and we like being parts of teams, and we like to help get patients better. So that is what we do. You have in your handouts, you have the first one is the body's response to trauma. And it's kind of a little primer on how your body responds when trauma happens to you and how the system can lock down. We're not going to have time to go over the whole thing, which is totally fine. It's basically your body is designed as a system. It has a programmed response. These responses are known. It's not some big mystery. And so when clients come in, we follow kind of the bouncing ball to find out what happened and how it affected their bodies. And we, where emotions lay in the body, this is all known, and you're actually going to get that handout too. So when people come in, what we're looking for is what has happened here and how are they loaded and what do we need to do? So a lot of times our clients come in with trauma that happened a long time ago. They're coming in with a sign and symptom that may be remote from the actual trauma area. So that's why we map our clients to find the original source so that we're not chasing signs and symptoms and not treating the root. So basically when something happens to you that your body cannot just immediately take off, it can fit into your system and be carried as basically a load. And so the handout kind of goes through mind-body trauma and then the parts of your body that will hold that trauma. So for example, adrenals respond immediately in a fight or flight. They can kick in the respiratory diaphragm, which will start to ping on the vagus nerve. And this can create a sequelae of events that will load the system from a traumatizing event. Again, these pathways are all known. And so that can kind of keep going. You can go fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And from there, if you're still in a trauma situation, the limbic system will get involved, which is the subcortical part of the brain. I feel like I'm talking really fast. I'm from New York. I hope this is getting through. I talk quickly. So anyway, so once a lot of times our clients come in, like I had a client yesterday who has full body pain. She has Hashimoto's. She has a lot of pain that's been unresolved. And then talking with her mother had a very traumatizing death when the young woman was 11. She's had a lot of trauma. She says she's never felt safe in her body her entire life. So this will affect the endocrine system. It can lead to autoimmune. So we're looking at, okay, what happened? Like, what did you enter, the planet having to deal with? And then what can we do to make you more comfortable? If you've had that level of trauma, the limbic system becomes involved. So the limbic system is that subcortical survival part of the brain, and that will start perpetuating things on its own. So when we're working with a client, we're kind of looking for where we need to intervene. So she is working with a therapist. She was actually sent in by her therapist. She's done well with the talk therapy, but they want to go deeper. So with her major loads are kind of mind-body loads. And that's what we're going to deal with first. So again, going through your handout, it talks about how the limbic system, when it's loaded, can perpetuate limbic system survival behaviors. We look for these with our clients. And then the goal is how do we take somebody out of that paradigm? And again, turn around the Titanic. If the Titanic had more time, it wouldn't have hit the iceberg. So it's like, how do we get the patient, kind of going on a different pathway here? So that is your first handout. Your second two handouts, the next two are what we give our clients for homework. And this was developed by my mentor. There's a whole book about this process called Body Wisdom, and it's called neurofascial processing. And essentially, you connect two parts of the body together to cause a reaction. And we give all of our clients some processing one way or the other. You have one sheet that is for processing a physical injury, and you have one sheet for processing an emotional injury. So the physical injury sheet on the second page gives you what we consider, yes, there, the link is in the chat for the handouts. So um, we have every part of the body processes information, obviously, but there are some that are kind of the regulators of that. So to process information, we work a lot with the ureters, which are the tubes that go from the kidneys to the bladder. Their job is to drain. Frontals, limbic processing here, parietals, thyroid, heart, lungs, spleen, liver, pancreas, kidneys, and prostate. So what we do often is um, we work with the client on kind of figuring out, okay, where do we need to start to release some held load? And then we give them the processing to do at home. We found that that helps things progress faster. So what we generally tend to do when you look at these handouts is you would look and see, okay, well, what is kind of going on with me? Or we do it to an area of a sign and symptom, and we call it taking it to the ureters. Like say you're getting, well, just, headaches, whatever. So you can have a hand on the area that's bothering you. The other hand would go across the low back to access those ureters. And you would hold in that position. We usually do that for 20 minutes at a time. And what we found that starts to kind of create a little bit of a change in how your body is metabolizing. We've actually done trials with people on EEG leads, but we've done this and you can see changes in their body as they do this. It's pretty cool. So this is one of those things that's so simple. You're like, how could that possibly do anything? But sometimes it's the simple things that are actually the most effective. So we have our clients, again, you would take an area of a physical sign, symptom, or a problem. Usually we take it to the ureters, which are across the low back. If that's too hard to reach, you can take it to the heart. And you would start to feel kind of a change in your body. In terms of mind body, being this is a mindfulness talk, the second handout is processing areas for emotional release. All right, so this is based upon the work of Peter Levine and also Chinese medicine, that it's the organs that process emotions, it's not your brain. And all those emotions are processed in different organ systems of your body, and those organ systems can become full. All right, so like my client who's never felt safe in her body, her adrenals are loaded, her kidneys, which process fear, are loaded. Your organ systems kind of hit, like it's in hantavirus, like load failure. They're just like, we're out. Like we cannot process any of this. It's too big, which is common with childhood trauma. So what we work to do with our clients is we help to identify from their bodies what may be the main emotion that's kind of stuck, and then we give them the processing to do. And we found that's super helpful with their healing, and it's a wonderful thing that they can do to kind of move things along. We don't, pick and search for things. We work on what's on the surface. So the goal is to keep the client stable. And what we've noticed, again, this is a very gentle way of interacting with your body. So what we can do, Jeanette, how much time do we have?
You have
We still have time.
you have enough
What?
time.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you wanted to play around with this, which is super fun, and again, this is one of those things, it's so simple. It's like, how could that possibly do anything? But I'm telling you, because we use it all day in the clinic, it is very helpful. And again, your body works like a machine. It's like a factory, all right? And your body responds to touch. All right, we don't have any equipment here. We are all hands on. We're all hands all the time. Hands are for healing. All right, so your body is programmed to respond to, again, when it's touched, you're sending information into the body. And everything that happens to you, it's basically information, right? So when you go through something that's traumatizing, you're hearing something, seeing something, feeling something, it's basically sensory information. What we're doing with the hands is we're working to override that information with something that is healing. right? So my client who's had trauma since the day she was born, the whole goal is to flood her with some different experiences, which are basically, loving care, and to override the impact trauma from those experiences. All right. So on the handouts, so again, we usually start, so the ureters are the tubes that go from the kidneys to the bladder. Their job is to drain. We use them to drain whatever else you're trying to drain. So to access them, we use the back of the hand across the low back. And again, sometimes that's tough on people's shoulders. If that is, then we have them processed to the heart, which is always healing. And then you would look at your handy dandy sheet here and you would say, okay, what emotion do I want to move through a little bit? And let's go, let's see, we have so many we can choose from right now. Let's do anger since we're in Washington. Okay, so the liver processes anger. If anybody's been driving around this town lately, you know what I'm talking about. All right, so what you would do, the liver is enormous and it's under your right lower ribs. If you're on your right ribs, you're on the liver. If you're like, lower. So you take your hand, you put your hand on the liver, which processes anger, and then your other hand would go across your low back. And what you would feel, you could feel heat, you may feel nothing, it may feel cold. But generally, when you're processing a big organ like the liver, you will start to kind of feel a little calmness come over you, right? The liver is a very important processing machine, and it's very important to your entire body. So it loves attention. All right. So when you put your hand on the liver's like, oh, somebody's paying attention to me. How nice is that? All right. And you're connecting the liver to the ureters. What this will start to do is upregulate the metabolism of the liver vis-a-vis the ureters, and you'll start to feel things open and relax. All right. The liver also, it controls the inferior vena cava, which is the main drainage tube into the right side of the heart. So it tends to, again, relax you from like a deep plumbing level as well. So when we give these for homework, we have people do them for about 20 minutes at a time. It can take a few minutes to kick in. And I tell my clients it's your official excuse to watch TV, but watch something calming if you're doing your processing. So you can have a hand on the liver and you can just serenity now, that situation down. All right. If there is processing that needs to take place in terms of reason for the, it's not going to mitigate having to do the work around healing from a traumatizing event, but it's going to calm it down. So we notice a lot of our referral sources who are trauma-informed therapists, they notice that their clients progress faster when we address the load that's in the body as well, which makes a lot of sense. All right, that's super relaxing. Let's see, let's pick another one. Pancreas. So your pancreas is a really important organ. And the pancreas processes things around your life purpose, like your path and purpose, but also it really gets hit with trauma at the level of when you're shocked at the level of humanity. So we've seen the descendants of Holocaust survivors, and we call them the hanky-pankies because all their pancreases are just loaded with trauma. So you would put a hand across the pancreas, so you're kind of on your belly button, shooting up towards your spleen, and you would have your other hand on the ureters, and you'd start to feel that to open up a little bit. The goal, again, is to give the body tactile stim that overrides the information that loaded the organ in the first place. So it's kind of like physics and biochemistry together, and you're accessing the fact that the body responds to touch. Touch is healing, and you're trying to kind of bring some comfort into the system. And what we found is, again, this is like super relaxing and does help kind of decimate some, not decimate, that's not the word, like dissolve some of that acquired load in the system. All right, another one we use a lot of, especially in this town, is the limbic system. All right, the limbic system, when it's loaded, will produce a rage response, which we've all not seen that on a daily basis. All right, so the limbic system, the limbic system actually sits subcortically here, but it's very easily accessed on the bridge of the nose. So we'll have a client, again, my client yesterday. The limbic system is symbol mediated, nonverbal, sensory driven, and irrational. So when I'm working with a client and I start to feel kind of that survival energy, we'll have them do a lot of limbic system to ureters or limbic system to heart. Again, you're working to override with healing what happened to them in their body. And we fully believe, because we've seen it, that you can pretty much heal from pretty much anything because the technology is there with the treatment that's appropriate for the situation. So we believe that everybody has the capacity to heal. And what we need to do is come in and set them up with the right resources. All right. So basically, again, so the limbic one is super relaxing. Like we mentioned at the beginning, we treat from newborn through geriatric. We see a ton of kids who had very difficult deliveries. We have a new one who's 5. The mother had a 92-hour labor. So imagine the head smooshitude happening on that little child. And what you tend to see is compression on that limbic system. These kids are filled with rage. So we work with a lot of children with behavioral issues, and we often find they've had cranial trauma during utero or during delivery. We work with that all day long. All right, that one's very relaxing. So you hopefully can download these handouts, and again, the ones that we're giving you have the main ones that we use. So again, for on the emotional sheet, again, the frontal lobes of the brain, these for like thinking, judgment, like rational thought. Frontal nasal is a rage response, that what will load from there. Parietals, sensory motor cortex. So we have patients come in with, full body pain, which is actually usually from the pancreas. So we're like, okay, what's happening there? So we're trying to find, again, what's happening. Every organ also has a referral pain pattern. So when we put that together, we're like, okay, is this a visceral pain pattern from that client? What's going on? Do they actually have pain in the entire body, or is the pancreas loaded, basically? All right, thyroid. So it has a lot to do, obviously, with communication, speaking up for yourself, that type of thing. The heart, obviously, is a center for hate and love, hopefully more love than hate. And we often work a lot with the pancreas because it has a lot to do with, the heart, because it has a lot to do with everything, and it will always win. Love always wins. So we try and process that a lot. All right. We also have lungs. So the lungs will process grief. All right. So lungs are huge for grief actually processing. So we process those quite a bit. The spleen, which is on the left side of your chest, in the mid side there, is usually disappointment in mankind. I'm not feeling that right now. So spleen has a lot to do. It's a kind of a bigger, higher energy organ. The liver, we talked about that, has a lot to do with processing anger. Pancreas, again, has a lot to do with, your life's purpose, kind of higher level, but also things that are shocking at the level of humanity. Kidneys have a lot to do with, they process fear. So those are above the ureters, so they're like the lower ribs across the low back. So again, if they're hard to do, you can always have somebody help you to do the processing. Fear is a really big one. And then like uterus, prostate has a lot to do, again, sexuality, also feeling safe in your body. And then we have upper arms that have a lot to do with control and self-control, and forearms for belief systems. All right, so we have found, again, the body of work that we use is very comprehensive, and we see patients who are in very many stages of health and unhealth. And what happened was the development team, again, would notice we kept coming up against these emotional loads. So it's like you have to have a tool. We're not therapists. We very, again, liberally send to therapists a lot for support for the client, but it's like, okay, manually, what can we do to move this out, right? The body is a self-regulating system. Systems theory, an independent system is self-regulatory and self-healing by definition, all right? So the body has the capacity to re-regulate. It just often needs some help. It gets overwhelmed. You can have too much trauma, too much going on there. Where to find somebody like you in Chicago suburbs? So there are a ton of practitioners in Chicago. And if you just Google integrative manual therapy, that is my root training. Put that in the chat. And there are several PTs who had my training in Chicago. So again, our whole thought process is if something can happen, we can make it unhappen as part of a care team, obviously. And part of the art is figuring out, okay, with this client, how much is it emotional? How much is it, mind, body? How much is it of the other loads and then getting them to the appropriate people to help. All right, we often have people come in that then we end up sending out to have more care because, it takes a village sometimes, obviously, with everything that people have been through these days. How's that? I feel like I just talked a mile a minute.
Not that fast.
Okay.
But then again, I grew up listening to New York television and radio, so
There you go.
I don't know if anybody south of the Mid-Atlantic states got it, but I did.
Well, they have New Yorker in the house. I love it. I love it. Question. Okay, how similar, different is your form of treatment for cranial? So my original training was in cranial sacral. So upledger cranial sacral is fabulous. My training was through Sharon Weiselfish G. Mateo, who taught for upledger. So this is back in the 90s when upledger was starting to go. And a lot of the higher level practitioners worked with him and taught for him. I'm a PT, and Sharon's whole shtick was neuropediatrics. And for me, I'm like, I want the hardest population. Like I want something that's really going to turn people around. So my bar was neuropediatrics. So Sharon took and we all taking Baral, Barnes, the whole 9 yards, but we wanted to again treat newborns. So we took that information and zhuzhed it to make a lot of it less direct. And Sharon went to the level of tissue pathology. So she kind of took that information and evolved it a little bit. In terms of Rolfing, we are the opposite of Rolfing. So for us to go deep, you go light. So we're going for vascular, we're going for dura. Like we are super, super light to go deep. So it's a little different. And does insurance cover your services? Yes, we bill as we are a cash practice, but we bill as out of patient, out of network PTs, and we bill the client's insurance company for them, so they don't have to send it in. Where are your clinics? So all this, so my website is Klein IPT, and all that information is on there. So I have an office in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And we don't deal with Medicaid. We have been out of network providers with Medicare, but we're actually coming out of that as well because Medicare considers cranial sacral to be experimental and doesn't cover it, which we have just realized. So we're actually having to go with that flow now. Oh, there it is. Right. We could offer telehealth. Again, our interventions are manual. So during the pandemic, we did see some of our existing clients to give them processing to do at home. But for us, it's like you're hiring us to do a job for you that we're doing hands-on. So we definitely, if someone can't come in or wants processing, we can absolutely do that through telehealth. But again, our kind of shtick is that we are doing hands-on care. So not that we're not willing to do it, but yeah. So, yep. So yes, the body can do so much stuff on its own. We do courses or us online. Yes. So our classes, so when I teach as part of a program at Avapana University in Venezuela. So I have my live people here with me, and then we're doing it on Zoom to Venezuela, and it's translated real time into Spanish. So we have people from New Hampshire, from all, like taking the classes with me here, like via Zoom. And I do have a colleague actually who's in Spain who teaches in Denmark. But as long as somebody wants to do online, they can absolutely do it from Europe. And then I also teach in Hawaii quite a bit, which has been really fun. So, but yes, we offer all the classes that we have here that people can take them online as well. And we've doing this program in Venezuela as part of a university program. We've really had to create a methodology that people can really kind of follow. So we are launching the online classes for the body operating system, and we've titrated it way down. So we're really breaking the information down and working on getting that launched as well. Any more questions? I have hands-on colleagues in Central Virginia. Actually, I do have a hands-on colleague in Central Virginia. He texted me yesterday. He's in Richmond. So Steve Duvall, Duvall, is in Richmond. Um, he's awesome. I don't know if that's considered Central Virginia. Oh, thank you. I love giving talks. It's super fun because nobody knows about what we do, so it's always enjoyable to be like, there's a world of manual medicine out there. References for Philadelphia, yes. Penny Zimmerman is in Paoli, and she's right outside of Philadelphia. She trained with me.
This says the Jefferson Center has anybody? They have
Sorry?
Jefferson Integrative Center has 3 PTs that are integrative PTs. Are they
Oh,
linked to
I love that.
are they linked to
That's
you at
great.
all? Oh.
Like Jefferson is in Philadelphia, or
Yeah, that's the largest. It's one of the largest East Coast centers. They have about, I think, 50 practitioners.
there is a lot going on there. I know my people better than anybody else, so they might be fantastic. I mean, there's, more than one road up the mountain here, so I like the work that we do. There are other forms of integrative therapy out there as well for hands-on PTs. Yeah.
Yeah, Jefferson is sponsored by the owner of the Home Depot. They had a
Oh,
50,
very cool.
yeah, I think the $25 million startup
I love
funds.
it. I'm actually teaching at a pediatric center in Pennsylvania in the fall. So we do a lot of peds. Is there a general whole body daily support self practice you recommend? What you would do is take yourself through the processing, like just start through and every day do one of these processing areas. And that tends to kind of keep things nice and fluffed and moving. And then you may find an area that's super reactive. Like if you have a hand on an area and there's tons of heat coming out, and you just feel you're like, there's something going on here. So it's kind of a nice way to kind of keep things open and flowing. And then apropos Alexandra, I teach belly dancing, which is a really great way to get things flowing out of your body. So I teach at the Innova Life with Cancer Family Center out in Mosaic for ladies with cancer. It's really fabulous.